it's that time of year again. Mega Man March Mega Month Madness! For this entry, we're going outside the Mega Man series, but in actuality, we're really not going that far. 20xdx is a game that wears its intention on its sleeves, to shoulder the Mega Man X legacy by mixing that Mega Man X style gameplay with mechanics of the roguelite genre, and I think it succeeds. Let me start by defining these terms, and then go through how the mechanics of 20xdx make it so hard to put down. Mega Man X began as a spin-off of the main series in 1994, in the West, and based off its success was able to branch off into its own series that ran to 2004, with 8 mainline entries, a few of its own spin-offs, and even a remake of the first game on the PSP in 2006, in the West. The X series spawned its own spin-off series with Mega Man Zero on the Game Boy Advance, spanning 4 games from 2002 to 2005, followed by 2 Mega Man ZX games on the DS in 2006 and 2007. This Mega Man X family of games is what I consider the Mega Man X legacy, whereas the original Mega Man series is more methodical in its platforming and shooting down enemies. The games with the Mega Man X trademark center around high-octane action platforming with a couple key mechanics shared throughout. Those mechanics include dashing and wall jumping, alongside charging up buster shots, finding upgrade parts, and grabbing hidden health upgrades and sub-tanks. This results in a fast-paced, almost frenetic game loop of platforming and destroying enemies, coupled with minor exploration and problem solving, with the pulse-pounding objective of carving the quickest path through all the baddies. Each of these games feature this high-octane action platforming, except Command Mission. One thing to note from this timeline is we haven't seen a game in the Mega Man X vein in over 15 years. And no, I'm not counting the gacha game Mega Man X Dive, which apparently plays similarly to these games, but seems very much pay to win unless you can commit to making it your full-time job. I did see that Minecraft crossover DLC, and that's certainly something. So in this vacuum created by Capcom, a small team called Batterystaple Games started working on their own successor, which they successfully kickstarted in 2014 called Echoes of Eridu. They then teamed up with Firehose Games and renamed their game 20xdx, and released it in early access on Steam that same year. The full game officially launched in 2017. I should probably be upfront and mention that Batterystaple already has a sequel, 30xdx, out in early access. I don't play games in early access on principle and would rather wait for the official release, meaning I know very little about that game. However, I also want to note that many Steam reviews comment that even in early access, both these games were highly polished and a great experience, so don't let my old-fashioned principles stop you. Additionally, while I can't seem to find it anymore, I remember reading some comments describing the flash aesthetic of 20xdx as somewhat off-putting, so if you were thinking the same thing, perhaps the high-res pixel aesthetic of 30xdx might be more up your alley. From what I can tell, the gameplay is very similar between the games. Personally, I think describing 20xdx's graphics as simple flash really undercuts the art direction and quality of the backgrounds, level assets, and the character sprites and animations. I mean, sure, the cutscenes, but that's really not what this game is about. Oh, and the music is jammin'. One last thing to touch on before digging into 20xdx is the Roguelite and its mechanics. My Roguelite experience is limited to Rogue Legacy and Downwell, so I'm going to stick to those as examples. To make a long story short, the Roguelite is an offshoot of the Roguelike, which features permadeath, procedurally generated maps, and randomized resources and items. Any new attempt in a roguelike game is called a run, and every run has permadeath, sending you back to the beginning when you bite the dust. Each run puts you through a procedurally generated map, and that randomness helps to vary runs. The resources and items you acquire are also randomized, meaning even your equipment varies wildly between runs. These 3 factors, along with a certain amount of difficulty, keep runs short and unique. Now, the 2 key factors where the Roguelite branches off are meta progression and the freedom to abandon turn-based gameplay. Meta progression is a system of permanent upgrades that can be purchased or unlocked with some kind of currency between runs. Rogue Legacy has gold, and Downwell has gems. These upgrades drastically change how you launch into a run, like increasing health or mana, buffing strength or defense, or granting special abilities. And release from the shackles of turn-based battles frees roguelites to play in real time if they so choose, like these action platformers. So, 20xdx begins with a cutscene depicting two scientists accidentally unleashing disasters upon the city, and our two protagonists are called in to save the day. The story really isn't the focus here, limited to this opening cutscene and the ending, but what it has instead are lore entries for items, enemies, and bosses that you unlock to flesh out some of the world. So if that interests you, it gives you a little more to sink your teeth into than something like Rogue Legacy's journal entries, though from my understanding, Hades is the roguelite to really bring the story and lore, but I haven't played that. On the other hand, the Mega Man X family of games put much more into the story and characters, for better or for worse.
What am I fighting for?
However, in these kinds of games, it's the gameplay that takes center stage. On that note, after 20xdx's opening cutscene, you're deposited into a tutorial area as Nina. Here you're taught to run and jump, dash and dash jump, wall jump, shoot regular and charge shots, and how to use powers. This training culminates in an easy boss battle, after which you can really get started. You're brought to the Ark, which serves as your home base between runs. You can continue to play as Nina, who plays largely like X with a ranged buster cannon, or switch to Ace, who plays a lot like Zero with a close combat saber. Both characters are incredibly intuitive, especially if you have some Mega Man experience under your belt. Nina and Ace play largely the same and are able to equip all the same Augs and powers, more on that soon. The only exceptions are the different weapons available to each character, which can be swapped out when found in diamond chests. Nina's weapons modify her shots, with a couple multi-directional options and a shotgun blast. Ace's weapons modify his range, combos, and damage output. But besides their basic attacks, your two player characters' mechanics are identical. For now, let's ignore the rest of the arc and jump into a run. It's apparent right away why I consider this a worthy successor to Mega Man X. Dashing, wall jumping, and charging up attacks are all quintessential Mega Man X, and everything's available right from the start. The dash gives you a burst of forward momentum and adds distance to your jumps, but can also be used to quickly reposition against enemies or to avoid damage. The wall jump opens possibilities in vertical level design, but also allows you to save yourself from a bad or awkward jump, or reach the perfect height for a shot. Whether you're blasting or slashing, you can tear your way through enemies with charged attacks as you work your way through the game's random assortment of platforming challenges. These skills feel like they're ported straight from Mega Man X, and are just as satisfying as they were back then. Your run will take you from stage to stage, but the way this works is a little complicated. Just as in Mega Man, there are 8 bosses, which take their stage themes from 4 zones, 2 bosses per zone. The different zones are Agnesort, a furnace facility, Frostor, an Arctic data core, Sky Temple, a floating ruin, and Vaculab, a jungle station. When you initiate a run, you are sent to one of the 8 boss stages at random. Upon defeating that boss, you're randomly given 3 of the remaining bosses to go after next, and you continue this way until you finished off all 8. The 9th and 10th stages always follow the same order, and each has their own stage theme. This setup allows for some routing, though it certainly fluctuates more than in Mega Man titles where you can choose from all the bosses from the start. You don't pick your starting stage, but there are some important choices to make, like going for Shatterbeak for his weapon, or knocking out a tough foe like Eternal Star early. And, true to the roguelite, all 10 stages are procedurally generated. Each zone has its own set of stage chunks that can be stitched together in countless sequences. These stage chunks are so numerous that across 20 hours I was still coming across new ones multiple times in a single run. But you will start to recognize some of the chunks that see a lot of use. But they don't get stale because of how the stages progress. Stages level up after you defeat a boss, meaning a level 2 Sky Temple stage is not the same as a level 5 Sky Temple stage. As they level up, stages introduce more enemies and hazards, speed up obstacles, and extend their length. In the same vein, bosses present an increased challenge as they level up. Comparing a level 1 boss to a level 8 boss, the latter will have an increased health pool, faster and more numerous attacks, and possibly a new mechanic, like how the twin astrals will revive their fallen brother if you don't finish the second one fast enough. This is a good incentive to take these guys out earlier if you can. This degree of stage randomization, a staple of roguelites, paired with the sequential difficulty curve, ensures each run is unique, yet grows more challenging the further you get, preventing the game from becoming stale. On the contrary, it's quite addicting. Speaking of bosses, defeating each grants you the option to obtain their power, akin to special weapons from Mega Man. I say option because the boss power spawns with two other bonuses, more bolts and a stat increase, and you choose which will be most beneficial for your run. And yes, bosses have weaknesses, but they're all doable without. After experimenting, you'll learn to grab the powers you like and skip the ones you don't. As for me, I typically skip the Mortar and Vera, but I like to grab the Splinter Frost and Boomerang Blade, especially when playing as Ace with his melee attacks. Overall, this set of powers isn't OP like the set of special weapons in Mega Man X, so you won't be spamming Storm Tornadoes the whole game, but I think it strikes a good balance. They can bail you out in tough situations, and some can even disable certain traps. One minor letdown is that the powers aren't differentiated between Nina and Ace. Beginning in X4, X gains special weapons from bosses like normal, but Zero gains his own unique set of techniques, typically involving his Z-Saber. Likewise, it would have been cool for Ace to get his own set of powers, but at the same time, I know exactly what each power does when I play as him because I've tried them all out as Nina, so I can live with it. In addition to powers, your player character can equip any number of augments, or Augs, which act as the power-ups and upgrades of the game. Core augments work a lot like armor parts, which equip to either your head, chest, arm, or legs. Found in core chests, you can only equip one per body part, so finding a new head core swaps out the one you already have equipped. And there are 4 sets, with a set bonus granted while wearing the entire ensemble. Probably the most interesting of these core Augs are the leg cores. Each one grants you an in-air skill like hovering, a 4-way air dash, or a double jump. These can be lifesavers in trickier platforming segments, especially in stages 9 and 10, and can sometimes enable you to skip parts of stages. Prototypes are Augs which can be acquired in very safe labs, which randomly appear in stages. These Augs offer massive bonuses in exchange for heavy drawbacks, and their descriptions aren't very detailed, so they require some experimentation and risk analysis. But most importantly are the standard Augs, which are found in chests and can be bought in shops using nuts, the in-run currency. These have a wide array of effects, from increasing max health or energy pools to increasing attack, weapon damage, speed, or jump height, from increasing health drops to extending iframes, from attacking through walls and shields to drawing in pickups while charging. Some even have a trade-off, like attack up but power damage down. There are 82 of these things, so there are quite a few I haven't even seen yet. Additionally, there are 9 kinds of repros, little support robots that hover around you and attack enemies or provide support. Your main takeaway here should be that you'll never have the exact same loadout twice, though you'll definitely develop some favorites that you keep an eye out for. Mine are the Charging Magnet, the Nut-Saving String Wire, the Quantum Spook, the Plumber's Hat, and either the Dracopence Bound or the Oxjack Splits. And some AUG can affect the choices you make, like if you found a bunch of max energy extensions, maybe you'll grab more powers than you would otherwise. In one successful run, I found the AUGs for shooting through walls and double jumping, and later the Charging Magnet, which got me through a number of tight spots where I thought I was a goner. However, besides core AUGs and prototypes, you'll only be able to find 5 AUGs and 2 other weapon types per character on your initial run. The remaining 77 AUGs, 4 weapons, and 9 repros won't appear in your runs until you've unlocked them from the Soul Shop using Soul Chips, which are your meta progression currency. These are found after defeating bosses, in flashing enemies, and by killing Dr. Sharp's pet Gamma Snomp before stage 10. This brings us nicely back to the Ark. The bottom floor is where you spend your Soul Chips, which you want to do because they disappear when you begin a new run. On the left is the aforementioned Soul Shop, which displays 3 random AUGs, and it should be noted that when you unlock an AUG, you'll begin your next run with it equipped, meaning you can try it out right away. In the middle, you can purchase permanent upgrades, namely a max health and max energy boost, spawning 1 diamond chest and 1 core chest at the start of each run, which guarantees a weapon and core AUG in the beginning, and Dolly the Cat Bot, who will occasionally appear in stages and spawn a chest with goodies. This batch of permanent upgrades can be toggled on and off. To the right, you can pay to equip previously unlocked Augs from a random pick of 3 for your next run, and there's a place to buy tokens for the slot machine. On the left of the middle floor, you can swap between characters, and on the right, you can start a single player run. You have 3 difficulties to choose from: Normal, Reverent, which gives you 3 lives instead of 1, and Defiant. In addition to being the hardest mode, Defiant has optional skulls, which are extra challenges you can enable for your run. Some of which include no nut or health drops, no item spawns, longer levels, enemies that move faster or have double health or deal double damage, and there's even an endless run option. The other portal allows you to play co-op, either in person or online, although when I tried it I was unable to find a rando to play with. The top left houses the tutorial and leaderboards, and the right side houses the daily and weekly challenges and their hardcore variants, in addition to Rush Job, which is a boss rush, and Seed Racer, where you can set the game's seed, which I guess is to share the exact same run with others. Lastly, let's talk about what you'll actually find in the stages, because if that's not very interesting, all that other stuff, great as it is, would be wasted. Thankfully though, that's not the case. There are a good number of enemy types, and what you'll face will usually depend on which zone you're in, like the penguin enemies in Frostor, these evil flowers in Vacuum Lab, and these floating laser robots in Sky Temple. However, stages 9 and 10 will mix any number of these enemy types together throughout. Furthermore, each enemy type has alpha, beta, and gamma variants. As they get stronger, enemies not only change color, but get redesigned to look more imposing. These stronger variants have more health, move faster, and boast another attack method. None of these enemies on their own present a major roadblock that a charged attack can't fix, but it's when they're grouped together or placed around stage hazards that they can really start to chip away at your health. And remember, the glowing enemies have extra health, so take that into account on your approach. Typically, enemies are sprinkled regularly throughout the randomly generated stages. Speaking of which, the stage design incorporates a number of different platforms and hazards. Zones tend to have their own take on spikes, traps, and deadly pools, though Sky Temple instead doubles down on bottomless pits. The zones also feature some unique design elements like the conveyor belts in Agnesort, the icy platforms and warp portals in Frostor, the moving platforms in Sky Temple, and the disappearing blocks and anti-grav panels in Vacuum Lab. These assorted elements have been mixed together to create a great many stage chunks. Most of each stage is built up of traversal chunks where you platform from one end to the other to progress towards the boss door. Dotted along this route, you'll find wooden and steel chests that contain goodies such as nuts, health and energy, armor, which essentially acts as an extra hit point, and even Augs to upgrade your character. You'll also come across vending machines where you can pay for a limited number of health or energy refills. Another recurring element are glory zones, which are short challenge rooms that'll have you disabling all the traps with the required power, killing all the enemies in a time limit or without getting hit, or platforming to the end of a gauntlet in a time limit without getting hit, or while being chased by a swarm. You want to complete these glory zones whenever they appear because they reward you with core Augs. As you continue throughout the stage, you'll also notice paths leading in the other direction. These diversions will typically put you through a self-contained, more rigorous platforming stage chunk. Some reward you with a chest, others lead you to the shop where you can spend your hard-earned nuts on Augs, repros, and health refills. And some lead you to those very safe labs where you can acquire a prototype if you like. These rewards can make or break a run, so for all but 1 or 2 configurations, I'd say go for them. The design of these stage chunks is what keeps the moment-to-moment gameplay of 20XDX at such a high caliber. With 1 or 2 exceptions, the layouts allow you to combine dash jumping and wall jumping in split-second reactions to clear the chunk and then start in on the next one. And the enemies spice up the stages further by blocking your route and forcing you to destroy them or maneuver around them. It is possible with the speed of your movement to bypass a number of the enemies because they are a bit on the slower side, but I tend to kill all the enemies to collect the goodies they can drop. The extra health can save a run, and the extra nuts can buy you the right Augs to get you all the way to the end. 20XDX is simply a joy to play. Its Mega Man X inspired gameplay is delightful, its roguelite mechanics are engaging, and it's incredibly easy to pick up and play. For me, the hardest thing about it is putting it down. I'm constantly checking the clock to see if I have time for one more run or even one more stage. It's like a siren song beckoning me over while I'm busy with other things. I find it so rare in the gaming world nowadays for a game to so completely blow me away and continue drawing me back to it over and over again. 20xdx is just a fantastic game, and I'm not even done with it. Besides the numerous Augs I still have to unlock, there are 2 bonus playable characters, either as DLC on PC or unlockable on console. That's past the scope of this video, but somewhere down the line, a new BPC entry. There are also 4 unlockable secret characters, each based on the original 4, but again, more on them in the future BPC episode. So whether it's 20xdx or 30xdx, I strongly recommend trying these games out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. They perfectly fill in that vacuum left by Capcom, and are proof positive that these legendary companies of old aren't required to keep the spirit of these classic titles alive. All you need is a small studio of talented, passionate people to innovate and bring that spirit to a modern audience. Hell, the game is so good that even Kotaku was able to find someone who actually likes video games to sing its praises for 10 minutes. Perhaps 20xdx's most impressive achievement. Thanks again for checking this out, and I hope to catch you in the next one.